Hey guys, this is Brett Young, Taylor Young, and Rod Erb, and you're tuned in to the Be Extraordinary podcast with Erb and Young. Real conversations about business, leadership, and personal development. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Be Extraordinary podcast. We have a special guest this morning, this afternoon, this evening, whatever time you're listening to this podcast. Man, I'm super stoked about this. We had this gentleman lined up a couple months ago. Some things happened. We had to move some things and been patiently waiting for us to be able to turn on the camera, turn on the mic. This gentleman, we had an incredible night where we were connected by a mutual friend, and man, you know, one of those situations where you're just like, he seems like a cool dude. And then you find yourself talking for like an hour in the corner about like life and everything, you know, and like you just connect on so many levels. So super stoked to be able to kind of turn the camera on, have kind of a real conversation today, which will be super, super fun. So before I turn it over to Ardavon today, I wanted to kind of give your background, and then we'll get into your story just because, man, that's a lot of the stuff we talked about that night was just your story and all the things, these parallels and these success threads and all these different experiences in life. So, but we have Ardavon Moayer today on the show. He's a director of sales for Dream Finders Homes. He is the podcast creator and co-host of Bricks and Banter, which is a real estate focused podcast that's local here in Orlando and to Florida. Which I was a pleasure to have been asked to be a guest on that podcast. We had a great time.
Yes, it was.
Which was amazing. So, but man, just by the way, there's just a ridiculously sick Panerai timepiece on the show this morning too. So if you're a watch guy or gal, watch out. You might want to go to the YouTube feed and check that out. But you know, shots fired. But man, Ardavon, thank you for being on the show, man. Such a pleasure. That your friendship means more than anything, and I'm so grateful that Emily Armstrong connected us. And before we turn on the mic, and I'll shut up, he goes, you know, I met Brett, and I was like, man, I don't know if I have any more room for any more bromances in my life, you know. and I am proud to say that we have a bromance after that after that hour. So, man, Ardavon, thanks for being on the show, man. Happy to have you.
Thank you, guys. It's an honor to be here. I think to piggyback on what you said, Brett, I think that initially I was like, man, there's just no time for any more bromances and any more cool people in my sphere. But I'm glad we did meet and we got to have that time together. It's very exciting to be here. You know, obviously I host my own podcast and I love talking to people, learning, and our conversation that night, I mean, automatically fast forwarded us like 15 years into our friendship. So
I love that. We were at Topgolf, man, you know, just hitting balls, catching up, you know, drinking some beers and doing what bromances do, man. So There you go. So, but man, so catch us up, man. I know you've got a lot going on. You're transitioning to Tampa right now. You've got some really cool opportunities from a career perspective. You're heavy into the new construction and new homes and real estate market. You know, what is that, you know, where are you at in that cycle? I know your life is extremely busy and chaotic and trying to probably live in two different markets at this time. So kind of give us up to speed of what's happening in your world.
Yeah. So it's been like a hybrid 6 months the past, you know, since really December, trying to open up a division in Tampa and then also kind of stepping back from the division in Orlando. Obviously, the real estate market has taken a shift too because of the interest rates and everything that everyone's hearing out there. So it's been rough to say the least. But from a personal level, balancing, you know, right now commuting to Tampa and trying to be involved in with those people, and then also I have a team here in Orlando, and you know, nights, early mornings, weekends doing the podcast because I love the connections, you know, and love talking about what I have a passion for, which is real estate. So I think that, you know, all in all, it's just balancing it and trying to ultimately do your best in everything you do, but realize that, hey, it's not going to be perfect right out of the gate.
Yeah, that's great. Well, so one of the things you mentioned, your transition into the real estate market, you weren't always in the real estate business. I think before that you worked with a law firm before that, and then I think it was semi-pro soccer before that.
Correct.
How did you, through that progression, how did you end up in the real estate market, and why? Why do you love real estate, and kind of what's led you to today?
So, you know, one thing I always tell people is, you know, it's not the knowledge, it's not the, you know, the experience. For me, it's the people. It's the relationships and going back into even semi-pro and, you know, kind of having 20 people from all different, you know, states come together, travel, play on a team passionately, realizing that, oh, you might have been the best in your state, but everybody's good now. And you face injury and you have a lot of setbacks. And, you know, it wasn't until I got into the law firm and I was paralegaling for a while and then the law firm grew. I got into operations and learned kind of how everything works behind the scenes. And a lot of it, if not all of it, was people. And how the relationships with the attorneys, with the judges' assistants, they really determined a lot of outcomes, believe it or not. And a lot of people, yes, the law is black and white, but there's a lot of gray in there. And, you know, I built a lot of good friendships, a lot of good relationships with attorneys, and there is a stigma out there that attorneys are a certain way, but I quickly learned that, like, everybody is different. And the relationships ultimately are what you want to cultivate because you learn so much from them. So I took that as like a sponge. I wanted to learn. I wanted to understand kind of the inner workings of how things were processed, but it ended up throwing me into real estate because towards the end of it, fast forwarding 3 years, I was getting people to say, hey, can you have your boss review this real estate contract? Can you take a look at this for me? Can you look at this? Can you look at that? And everybody my whole life was like, man, get into real estate sales, get into real estate. And so it wasn't until, because I was comfortable, you know, and it wasn't until somebody pushed me and was like, you know what, you're going to have to leave a happy position and go take a risk on something that you really don't know anything about. But my family's done real estate my whole life. So, and we're in Florida. So how do you not know about real estate, you know? Right. So that's kind of how it transitioned. And then, you know, one thing led to another. I was with another national builder, and then kind of followed leadership over to Dream Finders. And, you know, we grew tremendously, and then just promotion and another promotion. And it's been great. I mean, it's been a blessing, but there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that I feel like, you know, it's not anything that you can really say, oh, like, oh, that was awesome. It's like, we did go through COVID and we did go through that real estate chaos. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's really kind of how it started.
Ardavon, I like right away, you know, you talk about whether it was the team aspect of soccer or the people aspect of law. And by the way, I remember the saying, you know, a good lawyer knows the law, a great lawyer knows the judge, right? And it resonates with me. But no matter what industry you find yourself in, at least so far in this story, you're not in that industry, you're in the people business. And I love that about the way this is starting. So I just wanted to draw attention to that.
Yeah, I think that the biggest part we're talking about success and like, you know, like the name of the podcast, Be Extraordinary. I think that hits home because what makes someone extraordinary? You know, whether it's in sales, whether it's in insurance, whether it's in law, it doesn't matter what it is. The person or the people skills and the relationships are what take you to that level of being extraordinary.
God, say that louder, man.
You know,
I don't know where we're having this conversation, but it's been recent.
Was it in a pool in Mexico?
We did just get back from Mexico. Could have been in the pool. I don't know if we were having this conversation.
Can we say that? Can we say that, right? I mean, we don't want people Googling, you know.
For the record, I was not in the pool.
Urban Young goes Mexico.
Ardavon, disclaimer on this. I was not there in Mexico. Oh, that's funny. No, but I forget where it was, but it was like these arts and these subtleties that they don't even get trained on anymore. Like, you don't even teach on them. Like, for example, having a pleasant personality. Like, I'm reading, I forget what, it's like Napoleon Hill's life work. It's a book that's it's this thick. And it's just so rich. It's so rich. And it's his life work. And he used to go around to like the major corporations at the end of his career. And they would pay hundreds of thousands of dollars, which was a lot back then, to have them go train the top executives all over the world. And these are the things that he would train. And in there is a pleasant personality. And I'm like, it's so,
that's so old school. The way that you just said that, a pleasant personality is so 60 years ago.
It's just like that. I've never heard anybody in my timeline talk about a pleasant personality being one of the key attributes of success. But here it is, buried in the greatest success curriculum ever created, you know, and yet it's as plain as day, but we teach all of these complicated things. And it's like, what you're saying is like, and there's a plethora of these, but like, how many times have you just had an exchange with somebody in the first 15 seconds? You're like, it's just not a pleasant personality. And it's like, what is the delta between someone who's pleasant and someone who's not, amplified by hundreds of those exchanges over the course of a week and a month and 2 months?
It's like so profound.
Yeah.
It's just, it's so crazy. And it's like, so we talk about having, doing well in one craft and then doing well in another craft. And it's like, are they that different? And I think what you're saying is there's a common thread there.
Yeah. I mean, I can't remember the book, but I was reading a book a few years back, and the common denominator in people that were successful across the board was likability. And you can't put your finger on likability, and you can't teach it. You can't train it. Some people just have it. So I remember after reading that book, I thought to myself, I was like, man, like, can you become more likable, or do you just have that skill set? And like there was a lot of mistakes made along the way that kind of honed in on that people side that I'm talking about, where there was times where I wrote an email to a judge's assistant and totally just bombed it, and the whole case was affected by it. And I didn't realize that until my attorney was like, hey, let's sit down, let's talk. This is what happened because of what you said.
Wow.
And it wasn't even anything bad. It was just me not understanding that this person is old school. They're all about the intricacies of how I wrote the email.
I was just going to say that.
And it's like, it got to the point where and those are mistakes that you learn from, and then you fast forward. And then it was 2 years in, and I'm telling the paralegals, I'm like, hey, send a box of, bagels, everything bagels with almond cream cheese to this judge's office every Monday. And they're like, why? I was like, because we have 4 cases with them, and she loves them. And it was like stuff like that it was amazing to watch it transpire. You're getting responses faster, things are happening. And not to say that that's the way you should do business, but if you're likable and you're just, all around good and trying to be, the best at what you're doing, people are going to see that, and people are going to want to be around that. And how often do we run into someone like you said, and they're just like, man, something's off. Like, are they having a bad day? It takes a lot of growth to look and be like, oh, maybe they're not having a good day, or maybe they're going through something. Right. But your initial reactions are like, I don't want to spend any time with that person. I don't want to see them again.
I just want to go over here. Yeah, I do that a lot at parties. I'll be like, yeah, you know what? I'm just going to go over here and talk to somebody else. I don't know what it is. It's just, I asked one question, didn't love the response. Yeah. We're going to navigate.
It's not what you said. It's just how you said it.
It's just you.
Yeah. It's not what you said.
That
it's
is
just
like
you.
That is like a true curiosity, is something so subjective that it's so energetic and more of a feeling. Mm-hmm. Can you improve that? And I think the answer is, of course, I think you can, but not. It's got to be tough.
It's not. Sure. You can do it deliberately, and I'm just speaking off my own opinion of recent, revelations. But you almost have to like self-reflect, but not the way most people think you self-reflect, where you're like, okay, let me watch a video of myself and criticize myself. It's more like, am I nurturing good relationships with everyone I speak to? Am I leaving somebody with an impression every time I meet them? Mm-hmm. And being aware of that, because there's times I'm not in a good mood, and I'll deal with someone. I'm like, man, that person probably thinks I'm totally not the way I am.
Right.
But you can't always care about what everybody thinks, So it's almost like a push pull with yourself, where it's like, be aware, like with Brett, with meeting Brett, I fought Emily the whole time. I was like, man, I don't know, what do you want to meet this guy for? Like, for what? I just want to go play some golf. My wife's coming, like, we're gonna have some fun. And she's like, no, trust me. And I was like, you know what? Emily's never steered me wrong, and she's always been like 100% with me. So I'm gonna just fly blind. And then the second I met him, I was like, man, she was right. Like, right on the head. So I think it's just a balancing act of trying to be aware, but not kind of, I don't know, like not saying, hey, I'm going to watch videos, I'm going to take notes.
And then all of a sudden you become almost like overly self-conscious.
Yeah.
Well, you talk about that awareness, and what I hear you guys saying is the awareness is good, but the awareness can lead to being mechanical. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, I'm not a pleasant person by naturally. So it's like, I got to be aware of the fact that sometimes I could come across a little bit like a dick or something, you know? And it's like, and in trying to soften that, it makes me mechanical. And then you smell it, and you're like, man, to me, that's when it snowballs, right? It's when it's not natural, or you're aware of it, and then you try to overcompensate for it. You walk in a room, you brighten it or you dim it, right? Yeah. It's like, to your point, can you improve upon that? That's a tough one. I think you either have it and it's innate and you love it and it fills you up and you just love being around new people or crowds of people. And I just think about my own journey. I love that about what we do. I love being in those settings. But so I feel like for me, it comes very natural. And we talk about it a lot, right? But it's like, if it's not natural to you, man, it's like you got to be really aware. You got to be really aware, because I think mechanical is almost worse than just being real. I think.
I also think, like, I don't know. This is, again, my bias. Is like getting around like-minded people that value the same things. It's going to feel a little bit more natural. And maybe everyone's got their pot of people that their unpleasantness or lack of pleasant works within that group. It's just the people that, are more successful tend to, value being around people that give them energy, don't take it, kind of thing. So that's the one thing I was thinking about when you were talking about meeting Brett and vice versa, is how much of that throughout our lives where you meet somebody and all of a sudden these doors open through relationships or through advice, through mentorship, through whatever it is, or through fun. We just got back from a trip for some really good friends that we didn't know 3 years ago. But by meeting them, it's become a mastermind. It's opened up doors. It's become a very sharpen iron situation. It's like, but if there's not that likability, you're not going to want to spend time with that person to have that opportunity.
Absolutely.
So it's just interesting.
It's funny. I always use the example, TSA line.
Oof.
It's those people.
Maybe that's where those go.
Those people have zero care what you think, what you're going through, the day you're having, what you're wearing, how much money you have, what your job is. They don't care about anything. They just want to get you through that line and get you to take your shoes off and put your stuff in that basket, which people still can't
take
do.
Your laptop.
It's funny you say that, though.
Out.
And I find most of them unpleasant, hate what they're doing. I think this is me talking. But then you have that exchange where the one person.
That's exactly where I was going.
I'm sorry. Then you go.
No, you're. That's exactly where I'm going.
The one person that smiles at you and just halfway kind of engages you.
They get recruited away, though.
Right? No doubt.
Or they get
If you look at me the wrong way, if you're
promoted.
pleasant with me in the THC line, we're having a
But
conversation.
it's like it's so out of the norm.
Yeah.
That you notice it every time. I didn't mean to steal your thunder.
That's the impact that you have when you have that likability factor. Is most of the time, they get promoted or they go into another profession. But it's like, man, there's no reason for them to be nice today. It's Christmas or it's Thanksgiving but that person shines, and a lot of people remember that. So it's, how do you do that in everyday life without? You can't be perfect, but how do you leave an impact? How do you make that exchange? Because, the airport, to me, I think that those people are just like, they see thousands of people on their shift.
Right.
And I don't blame them sometimes when I see what they deal with. But the one that always is just nice for no reason, or they're just smiling, I'm like, man, I'll always remember that person.
Gosh,
It's interesting, because I'm trying to get tactical here, because I'm thinking about, like, how do you do that, right? Like, how do you leave an impression?
Right.
And it's one thing I noticed that I'm not great at, but there'll be moments where I'll, in the morning, not look at my phone. Like, so sometimes I went through like a 30, 45-day stretch where I was like, hey, I'm just going to not look at my phone until I get to the office. And I remember during that stress, the one thing I took away is that I was more excited to see people. Because I wasn't like communicating with people, and I wasn't being stimulated by Instagram and seeing people. But like, so when I saw that first person at the office, oh, hey man, like how was your weekend? How was your day?
Eager.
Rather than showing up like a zombie, because I've already been like kind of overstimulated by the 8,000 text messages and the podcasts I've been selecting on the way to work.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
That's
may
a
be
cool
something
hack,
to
man.
that.
That is a really cool
I've
hack.
not done that, but it's almost like over social stimulant. It's like you're so excited to talk to a person. You ever been that Friday night when you had nothing going on and you were like, I was like, my wife's gone, the kids are gone, I'm home by myself, there's no dog, and I'm like,
Scratching your
this
neck.
is awful. Like, this is weird. Like, there's nobody around. I need to know that, like, somebody actually gives a shit about me, because, like, I'm feeling pretty depressed right now. It's like, please give me somebody to talk to.
What a loser.
The Amazon person comes to the door, like, hey, man.
Have a beer.
Come in and have a beer. But, like, you're not overly socially stimulated, right? But if you have 15 texts going on and you've got all this stuff happening, it's almost like you've got your fix. Yeah. It's so that's actually a really cool hack. I'm gonna do that.
And how do you feel when it's It's funny because I'll be in bed scrolling and I'll just go down a rabbit hole watching nonsense, and then afterwards I'm like, man, that was exhausting. Like what did I just do for an hour? Yeah, like I just lost brain cells doing this.
Yeah.
And like, what was I watching? Like rabbits jumping into like some random lake or like something stupid that just led me down. So now what I try to do consciously is, and I mean I'm an anomaly. I'm a one-off. Like nobody needs to get up as early as I do and do what I do, but I'm just trained that way. But in the morning, the world is dead to me. Yeah. Wife's asleep, family's asleep.
What time do you get up?
4:45. So I do my workout and gym in the morning, but it's more mental. It's not like, I'm trying to work out in the morning because it's the hardest to do for me still to this day. But it's instead of going down like, hey, I'm going to sit and wait for my chest to heal while I hit the next set, there's 90 seconds, whatever. I'd just be on Instagram looking at nonsense and I'm feeling some kind of way or seeing something I don't like or seeing something I like. Maybe like I'll be on Amazon buying something random.
Right.
Instead, I'm like, you know what? What am I curious about? Something random. Because yeah, the podcast and the books are great, but they get mundane after a while, at least for me. So it's like, all right, someone said something about whatever it might be, something that's happening, and I'll go and I'll read an article. And I feel better about that after that 60 seconds because I just learned something instead of just aimlessly scrolling. I've only done it a handful of times, but I feel better because I'm like, man, I just had a gym session, but I just learned 5 different things.
It's intentional.
Yeah, it's intentional because everybody wants to listen to something. Everyone wants to read a book. Like there's so much that we want to do, but there's a difference between knowing what you need to do and actually doing it and executing on it.
Yeah, that's cool. I think like from a personal development standpoint, as I get older, it used to be like, oh, this is a good book, you read this. This is a good book, you read this. But we were talking about this yesterday. We had our core leadership meeting. We were talking about what the next book we were going to read as a company is. And my question to the squad was like, hey, like what's the pulse within the company right now? Like what problems are we actually having? Yeah. And so we talked about it a little bit. And then we chose a book that we were interested in to help us solve those problems. So it's just a little bit more intentional. I think you can say if you're learning about customer service, you could read 5 books about customer service and become an expert. Mm-hmm. Or you could read one about customer service, one about marketing, one about philosophy. Mm-hmm. Yep. And then you could kind of not get anywhere in the next 3 months, or you can become an expert. So I've just kind of borrowed that a little bit in my own life is like, what are you looking to learn? Be intentional to seek out the article, the book, the person that knows more than you do kind of thing.
Yeah. It's funny because like anytime I'm sitting at a bar or we're somewhere random, and my wife makes fun of me for this, but I'm like, I'll start a conversation or I'll just be nice, for no reason, but really I'm just like, I wonder what this person does for a living. Yes. I always like everybody I see, and like I'm quick to judge. I won't lie. Like I'll judge them straight up. I'll be like, oh my God.
You got a whole story in your head.
Yeah. But then I'm like,
they got a
timepiece tells you something always, but then like if they're married,
would you say something tells
timepiece usually?
Yeah.
Because
okay.
I mean, it doesn't matter what they're wearing. If they have a fire watch on, they do something. 9 times out of 10. But it's just interesting because there's been a number of times where we'll be on vacation. You have a swim up bar at a pool, and you talk to someone, and 2 years ago we were talking to a retired like New York state senator. Oh, wow. Who. If you would have looked at him and his wife and listened to their conversations, you never would have been able to tell. But as soon as we kind of like, cheersed and we're like, hey, we're drunk, you're drunk, haha, like we're in the water, everything started coming out. And I was just like, man, like might have not learned anything, but it was a cool experience because the guy like was telling me his whole life story over a beer, right? And like most people don't want to engage. Most people just kind of want to do their own thing. Like, don't talk to me, and for me, I'm biased. I'm a Middle Eastern man with a beard. And, at the end of the day, like there's certain things that I can come across a certain way. I can be opinionated. I can be judged. So I always think about that stuff whenever I'm going into a situation to kind of de-escalate in my own head.
Almost get ahead of what they may.
And it might not even exist.
Yes.
But to me, it does.
You're like almost overcompensating for any stereotype that they could have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
And it's, I don't know if it's just the way I was brought up or just what I've seen in the professional world, but there's a lot of factors at play when you are trying to make an impact on somebody or you're just trying to build even a temporary relationship.
That's a key aspect of influence. Like you can call it sales if you want, but it's influence. It's like if I know I'm walking into a sales appointment and I know that there's probably 2 big rebuttals that more than likely I'm going to get, instead of waiting till I get those rebuttals, I'm going to go ahead and build them into my influence, right? Like that's a subtlety that like just comes innate, and you don't. But that's a science-based like art of influence. You know, it's like, hey, look, there's probably things that are going to keep me from connecting because they're in the back of their mind. They're thinking this. Why don't I go ahead and tackle these right away, extract this, and then the wall comes down, and now we can actually get to the thing of what we're actually talking about, like your life story, actual connection. It's like all this stuff. So I think of that, and I think there's a lot of things that you just do innate, this likability factor that just come subconsciously. But like when you unpack them, you know, now I'm talking about them, like that's a key aspect of you could teach that to somebody. Like that's right. You know, and you know, you talking about most people don't want to engage. Okay, so how do you be engaging? Like you're asking questions. You're, you know, like, you know, I was taught there's 3 questions that you can ask somebody that you can have an hour of conversation. We were taught the exact same thing. It's like, hey, where are you from? That's a simple question that will lead you down a rabbit hole, right? Yeah. So, but
for hours.
For hours. So this was the sequence. It was literally the sequence that we were taught that I've used. I don't know. I've used it
10,000 times.
2 decades. Give a compliment. Okay. This is literally a playbook.
If you're taking notes, write this down.
Man, I'll be on a plane. I'm like, wow, dude, I love your tie. Where's that from? That's an awesome tie. You wouldn't believe how many people would love to tell you where they got their tie from. That'll open up a whole conversation. Leave a compliment and then start with, hey, I'm Brett. How are you? And
like,
they give you your name.
Guy asking me,
they love it.
Does somebody know him?
They love it. They go,
asking me.
Exchange the names, and then you go, where are you from? They give you. It's a whole different conversation. Then you follow that question up with, what do you do for a living? That sequence, that 3-step sequence.
And then you got to put your seatbelt on because buckle up. You might be.
Is just
don't be tired because you won't be taking a nap.
It's just like it seems so easy. And oh, by the way, be pleasant.
Yeah.
Be pleasant. But like that, you'll have to like walk away from the conversation because someone won't stop talking to you. But also you have to actually enjoy that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
here's a hack for all you introverts out there that want to become more, you know, extroverts. Because I'm a little bit of both. I think everyone's a little bit of both. But sit at the bar, right? Like sometimes when my wife and I will go out, our favorite thing to do is sit at the bar because we'll know we'll probably get in a conversation with the people next to us, and you're engaging with the bartender, and it's fun and it's more lively rather than you go to your table, you sit down, you talk to the person you're comfortable with, and somebody serves you. So I don't know. It's a little bit of a practical.
I see that. I mean, there's times when, and I love the first part of that, engaging with people, but there are times when I'm like, I just don't want to talk to anybody. Right. You referenced it earlier. Yeah. I mean, you know, you go through a day, you're on all day, and you've loved it, right? And maybe it's your wife. You get home and she's like, "Tell me about your day," and you're like, "I'm off. I'm done. I don't want to talk."
Yeah.
So it's like,
are you projecting?
are you projecting?
Yeah. True.
No, I hear that for sure.
Yeah, that's funny. I mean, I think a lot of these things do come innate, but it is kind of cool to unpack where they come from and how to replicate those things and how to use those things, because that's the awareness. If you're aware of it, then you can deploy it multiple times over and over again. And I just can't emphasize the fact that that's one of the things I pulled from our conversation that we had initially. It was like, dude, this dude gets it, man. He's just a people guy. He loves people. Like, in the art and skill of just, you know, connecting with people is you feel that instantly when you hang out with you.
It's one of those things where, you know, I tell people, I've always, I mean, since I was a little kid, I talked a lot in school, talking too much. I've always had that, but understanding the intention, like we talked about, and why you're saying what you're saying or how you're acting. And honestly, before I got married, I probably was, I have come farther in the last couple of years because understanding different perspectives, being a little more empathetic and not judging, just because my culture is judging. I come from a judging culture. You know, in my growing up, I was just like soccer athlete. That's it. That's all you know. That's all you care about. And I really didn't care about what anybody else thought or, you know, what impression I left on them. But then after a while, it got to the point where I'm like, man, like, I don't like this. What can I do to change it? Mm-hmm. And it is hard because you can't always be on. You can't, like you said, you know, sometimes you just want to I mean, sometimes we do like a sales meeting and it's like, you just went through a whole presentation. I talked to 50 people and I'm finding out about all of them, that I haven't seen in months. And then you go home and you're like, oh, I don't even want to talk, you know? And then for me, it'll be like 8 o'clock. I'm like, oh, I got a podcast. I got to go talk to this guy. But I think it's full circle. Like, I don't want to pat myself on the back and say that, I've got it all figured out. It's at the end of the day, you have to learn from your failures. You have to be understanding and emulate people that you want to be like. It's like for you, like you were so nice off the rip. My initial gut feeling, I'm like, why is this guy so nice? What's he trying to sell me? Yeah. Like that's how I think. Like I was like, man, he's gonna try. I was like, babe, if he pulls out something and tries to sell me something, I swear to God.
Well, I had a bunch of watches in my coat jacket. I just didn't feel like it was time to open it up. No, but that's
like that's the culture. That we were brought up. Some of us to be that way. And so once
there's a cynical side of there's a cynical side of the people person.
Yeah, because
you think you're you think you're a better judge of character than you probably are.
Yeah.
Or at least you're quick to form an opinion about someone that comes at you.
Yep.
And I'm speaking about myself, right? It's like I have this, I was taught this at a young age and I think it's just natural, but it's like someone comes at you really nice, you're like, your guard goes up. It's like, why can't they just love doing what you love doing? Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm telling myself a lot lately, right? It's like, when people come at me and they're really nice or they're really engaging, I'm like, come on, dude, like that's my job, right?
Yeah,
that's what I want to do. Don't do that to me.
Yeah,
and I'm telling you, but it's like, and what I catch myself doing is I catch myself in that, almost flipping that switch on. I'm like, time out. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's you, right? Yeah. That's you.
That's
I relate
cool
to
perspective.
That. Yeah,
it's like a flip side. It's like a darker side to trying. Like it's almost like you can't go too much.
Yeah,
dude. I'm telling you.
I'm laughing because we were in the pool. Not to go back to Mexico for a second.
You know what?
How long were you guys in the pool?
No, listen. That's on Saturday we were in the pool for 12 hours. Yeah. No,
I mean I got out.
No,
I didn't.
It was 8 hours.
Not once. No, go back to that because I appreciate the accountability and it's. Go ahead, Brett.
No, but I mean, you just, there was just a couple exchanges where Rod's, he comes to me, he's like, hey man, this person right here, watch out. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, man, I don't know about them.
Don't even leave your drink around them.
Like, I think they're fine.
I think that's the cartel.
Yeah. I was like, bro, they're fine. They're nice.
That's a skill set though, right? It's when do you know? Because you really don't. Some people are genuine and it takes a while, but it's sad because it's like, man, I'm trying to be like that. I'm trying to just be happy-go-lucky and just like give my best foot forward. But when someone does it to me, I'm like, man, you're a weirdo. Get out of my face.
Same, man.
We struggle with that, right?
We need a support group, man. We need. I will say that I go back to what we said earlier. Awareness. I'm a lot more aware of it, and I don't like that about myself. I've said that for a while. So it's like I'm at least the awareness. And and again, what I said earlier about when there's awareness, it becomes mechanical. Mm-hmm. So I'm aware of that. So I just try not to say anything. And I've gotten a lot better at it. But
that's a good little hack. That's good. I feel like that's a cool perspective. Like, hey, that's a tactical thing you can, in deploy.
Yeah.
As you get uncomfortable in these situations where you want to. Engage in a behavior that you probably don't necessarily want to engage with anymore. That's cool.
Well, I don't even think it's a behavior. It's not that I don't want to engage. It's that I want to call it out. Mm-hmm. And it's like, just shut up.
Yeah.
Just keep it to yourself. And what I'm learning is that it doesn't always play out that way. That's kind of the point that I'm making. Is
Thank God it didn't play out the way that you said
right?
it was going to play out.
All those ARs on the beach. I mean, I told you we were good.
I also think it comes down to a frequency too. Like if you don't have like a love at first sight moment, but let's say you're marketing, right? And your expectation is you're going to go meet this mortgage professional, this realtor, whatever it is. You can't go in with the expectation that like, they're going to love you and they're going to send all your business, right? Yeah. Like it's a process. You have to consistently show up with a pleasant personality. Yeah, and if you do that over a long period of time, you're going to build trust and then they may open up. And it may work out that they open up on the first time. But I also bet the reason that you guys hit it off is because you were referred by a trusted acquaintance.
Yeah.
So you already go from 0 to 50 right? Because of that, which is another marketing and sales hack, right? That's a different
triangle.
right? When you get introduced by a third party, you skip steps.
Amen, dude.
But
That's
if you're
a
meeting
great
somebody
point.
cold, you can't have that expectation. You have to consistently show up with it.
Yeah, that's a great
Positive
point.
time.
Yeah, the common thread is somebody, you don't know him, you don't know him. You guys certainly can't trust each other, but you trust her.
Yeah.
Right? That's a great point. Great point.
I think that's the triangle of trust.
Triangle
Is that-
trust, yeah.
know.
That's why third party is so important. It's like
Yep.
to my friends that here I got in the insurance business. They're like, Rod, you don't know insurance. I'm like, yeah, but let me introduce you to my partner who does, right? And I have my friend, and I introduce him to my partner who knows insurance, and I just shut up and let that triangle work. And it's like they trust me, they don't trust him, but I've edified and introduced him as the authority, and they listen to him, and eventually my authority and credibility goes up because I'm associating with yeah.
That's great.
Let me
That's-
ask you.
that's
So right now,
tactical.
you're leading a team. You mentioned you have a sales call. Maybe there's 50 people on there. What are your current challenges and opportunities right now in this same environment that we're talking about?
Love
These
that you
same
asked that
skills of
question.
influence.
Love that question.
Yeah, it's a great
So
question.
I'm going to vent a little bit. So right now I'm building a team. My Orlando team is passed on, and we have 35 active agents on the
You
team
say
right
passed on, new leadership.
now. Yeah, new
Got
leadership
it.
or existing leadership.
Got it.
Building my team in Tampa, we're doing the standard interviews, recruiting is doing their job, marketing, the company's doing their job. For me personally I'm building my team, and I hate to be such a stickler, and I've already been told this by recruitment, but there is a certain type of personality or personality types that I need on the team. Not want, need. Because it's a new division. It's a fast-paced environment. Just having good sales or doing $20 million in 2022 doesn't cut it because it doesn't tell me anything about you. So what I've been doing is I have them go through the process, and I watch how they react to certain things that are uncomfortable. And people think I'm crazy. They're like, you do all that? I'm like, yeah, because some of these individuals, and they will reach out, they will get a second interview, they'll do a Zoom with, the recruiting team. I'll send them an email introductory, and I'll say, hey, we'll be in touch. Now I want to see what happens because they get ghosted.
Yeah. Do they follow
Wow,
up?
you do it on purpose.
So because I have to, we're actively seeking. So I need a lot of people that I can, filter through before I make decisions because these are important neighborhoods and an important, market.
Yeah.
And so it's already happened with the 3 or 4, and I hope they never listen to this, but they will do a follow-up email, which is standard. Great. Read it and move on. Then you see it.
Wow.
Hey, I never heard back. There's not even a hey, good morning. It's not that nice. Good morning. Hey, just want to follow up. Thank you so much for your time. That always comes. It's the next one. It either never comes or they reach out to recruitment frustrated because their expectation is that they should have got the job.
He never got back to me.
They're qualified. They should have got the job.
Entitlement.
But then they reach out to me. Then they send me a LinkedIn message. And now it's like, follow up was one thing, but now you're showing frustration in a tone in a writing for what? The expectations.
Did they ever call?
No. I mean, they can't call. They don't have they have the office line, but it's just a standardized process. But I've seen that, and it's been on comments. I see it come out of them. I'm like, if you're dealing with frustration like this, with something like this, how are you going to treat a buyer?
Wow.
So good. Oh
And
my
Wish
goodness.
the one day I don't have my notepad, I would be writing.
And
that
that
down.
is my challenge right now is, I've only got 2 people in Tampa, and they are awesome. They're pretty much like family, they're like us, they are self-driven. They care. They're willing to go above and beyond. And I always tell people I am transparent. If you don't feel good in the morning, don't feel like you have to write me a long email story and say, hey, I can't go in. Just tell me, dude, I don't feel good. My stomach hurts. I'm not on today. No problem. I don't want you off in front of a buyer. Talk to me. Communicate.
Amen.
But finding those people is very hard because, and I have a couple. I've got 2 good ones, and it's not age, it's not skill set, it's the likability, and they're correlated directly with that reaction when they get ghosted.
Ardavon, my wife had this event last night, and we went to this sushi restaurant, and I had some bad sushi, and I woke up in the middle of the night, and I had to go poop, and now I'm wake up in the morning, it's time to come to work. I just don't feel good.
Stop it.
And it's funny because our Orlando team, we have such a good relationship. So people are just like, hey man, like I didn't sleep till 4 a.m. There was somebody had a party next door. Like, it's just, okay, quick, no problem. Like take your day, do what you got to do. But it's so funny to me because these are, if you looked at their profiles and their experience and everything, you would be like, wow, this person is acting like a 5-year-old. Yeah. All because their expectation is they should get the job. And it's not that I'm holding anything back. I'm just saying like, hey, we're interviewing 20 candidates. It's going to take a couple months. Do the process. You'll get in line. Like I don't control it. It's the company controls it. But how you react and interact with me, what are you going to do about it?
I love that, man. I mean, we always say we're slow to hire. The process doesn't have to take a long time, but we like our process because it just gets people on multiple days, multiple touches. Like if somebody comes in a good day, they have a good interview. Okay, that's them that day.
Yeah.
But what about next week when they come in and they had a flat tire and their dog's sick, and how'd they do that day? Right?
Where do you guys do interviews?
How do we do it?
Where do you do them?
Well, we do an intro call. It's more just like, let me feel your energy. Is there an interest? Let me promote to the next touch, which is going to be in person. And then there's going to be third party, somebody in the role that comes in, does a more formal interview. And then the last step is going to be the team. And it's going to be getting around people, lunch, coffee, let your hair down.
Yep.
That kind of thing.
I always meet them at a coffee shop. Very casual. And I'm usually multitasking just to test that. Like laptop's open, I'm texting just to see. And I apologize. Obviously I'm polite about it, but I'm like, hey, sorry, emergency. I gotta, just to see how they react. And 8 out of 10 times, I can see their personality.
It's really good.
We have so many similarities.
Like it's just, but it's like once you see it over, and I mean, last year I want to say we probably interviewed 50 or 60 people, the leadership team, and it got to the point where like, hey, you guys gonna put anyone on the bench? Like, you guys doing all these interviews? And I'm like, man, it's just I see something, and as soon as I see it, I'm like, that's never gonna work because we are all very like-minded, and like you almost have to put people in that situation because you're gonna see the best of them when they're interviewing. I want to see the worst of you. And if in that moment you're still good, I'm good.
Damn, I just learned something.
Yeah, and I think the more touches you can have, the more that can come out. That's my opinion. Yeah. Right. So or in your situation, the more I can, do that intentionally, I can see, okay, this is how they respond. I see, okay, this is how they respond. And now I can feel really, what about when you feel convicted about somebody? What about when you go, you know what? I've been playing these little games with them and I'm testing them and then all of a sudden I like what I see. Is it I got to go get them.
I shut it off and immediately I'm like, listen, man, this is what we're offering. This is where we're at. I don't run it if it doesn't need to be, if the car's clean, you don't need to go through the car wash. So it's like, once I see that, I'm like, hey, you're hitting all the marks. You have a good energy about you. And they're not talking about the question. They're talking about a situation or a person or a way they made them feel. And I get that energy. I'm like, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to send you to someone who's a trusted source right now, live. You're not expecting to go anywhere else. And you're off your rhythm. You're going to get in the car and go 10 minutes down the street and meet someone who I trust, who's of a whole different world, but still part of the company. And I'm going to see what their read is on you because you're going to go watch them live in action in the sales model.
Wow.
And if they tell me the same thing, I'm like, all right, my instinct was right. And I think it's crucial in the way I do it. I think you have to have other eyes on it because I don't know everything and I've been wrong. So there's been times where I've sent somebody over and they're like, hey, I don't know about this person. I'm like, what do you mean? I loved them. And they're like, I don't know. I had to step away, and then this person really whatever. And then 3 months into them being on the team, let's say they came on, they're not good. They're not a good fit. Or we see something we don't like. And I'm like, man, I should have listened to it. Wow. So now it's like initial coffee, send them to somebody, have another person in leadership, meet with them. And I don't think anyone plays as many games as I do because I'm just cerebral and I'm just doing all this stuff in my head. But it works because you filter. It's like you're constantly shaking it and shaking it and filtering it out. And then once you get to the real person, there's a lot of times where it's too late. Sometimes like, damn, we hired them, and you know, and it happened to law firm too. Someone comes in, they're sharp, they hit all the marks. I'm like, wow, they're gonna be an awesome paralegal, and then they're horrible,
fired up.
Yeah, and then the person who walks in 15 minutes late with an iced coffee in their hand and 6 bags and their cups falling and their keys are everywhere ends up being the best employee you had. And so it's interesting because both of the individuals that I hired and worked with directly, I still keep in touch with both of them. I still give them recommendations whenever they ask. Like they were so good at just being a good person in the role that we did everything for them. We were like, hey, don't waste your time doing this $15 an hour job. Go somewhere. Go do something because you're too good. And those are the type of people that, you know, I when you meet someone, you're like, I want to hire that person.
Right.
Like, I want you on my, like, if I were to meet Brett and he's like, hey, I want to get in a new home sales, I'd be like, dude, what do I need to do to get you? Because I know you're going to be this person for a buyer. And it comes out. You're going to be frustrated. You're going to be overworked. You're going to be, you know, having bad days. That's going to be more than your good days because that's just the way life works. So if I can get that out from them quicker, then I can, you know, better interpret what kind of individual they're going to be. But that's the challenge I have right now. I'm very picky, and I want a certain type of person because it's going to be a hustle. It's going to be a grind. And, you know, I remember when I was in sales and early management, you know, my first 2 New Year's, it was like 11:50, and we were all on the phone talking to admin, trying to get deals in to close out the year. And like, not a lot of people are to do that. Hell, I didn't want to do it. You know, but I was like, hey, I got to do this because it's my pocket, it's their pocket. We have to do it.
Wow.
I just want to say thank
Sorry,
you.
I went off on a
sharing.
tangent.
No, I appreciate the
awesome
candor. We talked about it before we got on just the honesty, right? Like, don't give me the answer. Like, no, give me the real and let's work through it. And, you know, a lot of times I think there's a misperception of culture that the culture is so good that you can just plug anybody in it and it's going to be fine. And it's just not the case. Like, we've seen it time and time again. And I think as a leader, as a business owner, like, if you ever feel that way, you're in trouble. Like it's almost the opposite to where you get a little nervous when you introduce somebody that's new. And the bigger you get, it's not as big of a deal for one person to come into
It's
a
like
company
a cancer
of 40.
cell can spread.
It absolutely can. But the hiring process is the magic of the culture, in my opinion, because you, start with who is your, you know, our kind of guy, our kind of girl. Like, what do they look like? What do they embody? Okay, perfect. We're looking for that. And then when you find them, let's make sure we put them through a long enough process or an intriguing enough process that we can get that out. Okay, now they come into the company and they thrive, or you know, or they don't, but they have a better chance to thrive, and they have an understanding of what that culture represents because you've already vetted them in that way throughout the process. And I think whenever we miss, it's because we've skipped steps and we didn't set an expectation. And so I always talk about that first call. I try to scare the person, not like intimidate them. I just try to like, hey, we're a little bit crazy. We read books together. We're super weird. I mean, that might not be for you. So, you know, we like each other. I don't know if that's weird for you. We like to hang out with each other outside of work, you know, and if people aren't about that, they're kind of like, it's not for me. And you're like, perfect.
Yep.
So
that's another great hack right there. It's like, don't, you know, it's almost like, I think sometimes I've seen or have heard talking to other operators or leaders about, you're trying to sell this position.
Right.
And it's like, no. Do the opposite. You know, it's like undersell it, make it worse than what it seems. And if someone's still interested, you know, then let's have a conversation. The worst thing is you just set an expectation that is not, it's below that expectation.
So
like,
when do you
you're
sell
just
the
setting
dream?
somebody up for failure.
So because we know there's a time to sell the dream and there's a time to do what you're talking about. So in your cadence,
Such a
what's
good
your opinion
dichotomy.
on when you sell the dream?
Such a good dichotomy. I think when you're talking about a specific role and a job and the intricacies of that job, I mean, I'll just say it on air. I mean, we tell people all the time, like, look, here's the deal. You're going to come in here and you're going to eat shit for 6 months to a year. You need to learn the business. You don't know this business. You want to get into new business. I don't care what kind of degree you have. I don't care where you come from. Everybody starts at the start, and it is going to take what it takes. But that's the second conversation. That's what we're talking about. You know, we're talking about the intricacies of the actual aspects of the gig. Because what ends up happening is someone comes in and they look at everything and they're like, oh, you sold me on this dream that you did, right? So The selling of the dream is when you're recruiting for before you get into the intricacies of what the job is. So on the macro, you're selling the dream, right? Here's the prize. It's worth the price. I'm talking about the prize right now. Screw the price. The price, it takes what it takes. We'll get there, but here's what the prize is. So on the macro with recruiting, absolutely selling the dream. But then when someone engages to say, okay, you know what? I like this prize that you're talking about. I see it. I want to talk about what the price looks like. Okay, well, now we're going to talk about the price. So enter the dungeon, because it's dark and deadly in here, because I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We're going to talk about what this looks like. And it's like this dichotomy of push-pull, like you say. It's like, look, man, I'm going to paint the picture of what it is, because it's true. It is true. Like whether it's real estate, the insurance business, there is an incredible promised land that is available. But you got to lift the weight, man. Like you got to pick it up and you got to put it down, and you got to do it a lot. And so as long as we can focus on what that is, and I could sell the dream and you buy that, okay, then we can actually talk about what the price is. And you might find out how much volume is required to do in the workout, and you might be like, this isn't for me. That's okay. But I'm not going to start with the price. I'm always going to start with the prize. I'm always going to start with the pleasure, not the pain. Because at the end of the day, that's what everybody's looking for. So, but not, and then the second part is, are you willing to do what's required? But that's a great question.
I think it's for us, it's in real estate, it's the same thing. People see like, oh, I want to dress nice. I want to make a lot of money. And they think, especially in new home sales, like, oh, I get to sit in a pretty model and
air conditioning.
And and I just get these leads come to me, and I don't have to work that hard.
That's
I make all this money.
Yes.
They come in already with that preconceived notion. So for me, I'm like, I already know you're thinking of all that. Here's what you actually have to do.
This comes back to what we talked about earlier, right? That's an objection. You're getting ahead of that, right? Like, so it's not. I'm not waiting for you to say that, but I'm just going to make sure we get it out in the open, because I know that this has probably been a roadblock in past conversations or in past behaviors when I've made the hire. So another art of influence that is real tactical stuff.
100%. Because the reality is, I always tell them, I'm like, hey, 6 to 12 months, you're pretty much going to be broke. This is what you're going to make. Do you have savings? Is your family or your significant other aware of what you're going to be going through?
Ooh, that's a big one.
Because if you don't have their buy-in, you're used to making money, or you're coming from wherever you're coming from. Like, this is going to, it's 6 to 12 months going to take, this is what's going to take, and this is what your days and your weekends are going to look like. It looks pretty on the outside, but there's no one that, I mean, every sales agent I've ever worked with that is successful, they make a lot of money, but they put in that work.
There were a lot of lonely times in that model.
Yeah. And if you look at the market now, think about 2 years ago, we had everyone and their mom was in real estate, and everybody was doing well. Well, there was a lot of 9 times out of 10, I'd see the interaction. I'd be like, man, this person doesn't know anything about what they're doing. And how did they sell 300 homes last year? It was just the market we were in. Fast forward and look when the market slowed down and got to a point where you actually have to finesse a little bit and know about lending and know about insurance and know about taxes and know finance a little bit. Now, I mean, Florida has the top 3% make all the money. There's a reason for that. And I think
that in real estate, that's the statistic.
It's something close to that. Yeah. It's one of those where coming into like an interview or them coming into a position, they're thinking that already. A lot of times they don't realize what it takes. They're like, oh, well, yeah, people just kind of walk in, right? And we just kind of sell them the home. Like, that's it. I'm like, the easiest part of your job is selling the house. Everything else is a difficulty. And you see that reaction, like you said, once you start talking about the price, like this is what it's going to cost, their demeanor changes. And they're like, well, I mean, what do you mean? I've got 6 kids and I have to be at T-ball practice at 6 o'clock, And like, it's a real conversation, because I tell them, I said, listen, you would be great if, like I said, I like them, like, you would be great, but you have to make the sacrifice, and that's the expectation. So let's just have a real conversation. And I know in my industry, a lot of people are not used to maybe leadership like me. I feel like I am a little bit different, because I am very open and honest with them. I'm very real, and I don't sugarcoat. The one thing I always promise everyone is, you're going to know exactly what I'm thinking. I'm going to tell you. Whether it's good or bad, whether I don't know, whether I need help. Because at the end of the day, the leadership position should be a support position. You're there to raise people up and to hold them up and to make them better, not to tell them what to do. If I got to tell you what to do, then I'm not doing my job, and you're not doing your job.
Yeah.
So
I hear trust. Transparency creates trust.
Takes time.
And so in order for me to support you, it's built on a foundation of trust. So if I'm telling you one thing or I'm not saying anything and you believe or think that I am withholding or I'm not being transparent, that's the fastest way to erode trust.
Absolutely.
Right? I would rather we've talked to our leadership team about this. I want direct conflict. I want direct conflict. I don't want indirect conflict. I have a really big problem with indirect conflict. There is no direct conflict in my life that I've ever had that has ruined a relationship, ever. There's just nothing that could ever happen on a direct level that would ever be something that would jeopardize the relationship. As a matter of fact, it usually makes it stronger. But these indirect conflicts, because they erode trust, right? Withholding something, finding out from somebody else, you didn't tell me this, why didn't you get it? Like, that is the quickest way from a team building perspective to just wreck and burn down everything that you have.
Yep.
And so when I hear that, I hear that is another tactical, intentional, whether intentional or subconscious way to influence with people. It's transparency.
Yeah.
You know, someone could always say, well, Ardavon might be a little harsh, but he's always going to be transparent with you, right? Brett can sometimes be a little harsh, but he's always going to be transparent with me. And that doesn't mean I'm not caring and loving and lead with love, but it also means that the enemy is fake. The enemy is withholding. The enemy is back channeling information when I could have just been transparent with you in the first place. The other thing I think is important is, like, that is a noble thing to tell somebody how hard it's going to be. You know, we've had individuals get into the sales game and they have to go work on a Saturday and they're up in arms about it. You know, it's like, well, then shame on us. We weren't transparent because that's a leadership problem. That's not a them problem. We should have been very candid and clear that, like, there are open houses on Saturday and real estate is our referral driver. Like, so we're going to go, if there's smoke, then there's fire, and we're going to go where there's fire. So, you know, we have taken a lot of reflection on that to say, like, we were not helping that person by not telling them how difficult it was going to be. Yep. As a matter of fact, we probably delayed their success by 6 months, a year, or 2 years because we failed to do what was required and have a hard conversation initially because maybe we wanted it for them more than they wanted it for themselves.
And it's so true.
It was based around convenience and wanting it for somebody, or wanting it. It's almost like you didn't look at it and go, you know, this may or may not work out, but let's have the hard conversation first.
Or maybe you had to fill a position. Yeah. And you're like, man, I really just need this position.
They could do the job.
Yeah, you know, I think it makes me think about leadership is logic based, right? In leadership, there should be no emotion. It's logic based. So when you have your leadership hat on, your leader hat on, it's what are the logic points? What are the points that we're not going to debate them? They are what they are. The data, the numbers, whatever. When you put your coach hat on, that's when enter emotion.
Oh, that's
right?
Cool, because I was just about to disagree with you.
Yeah, same.
But I love that. That's a really cool.
I learned this through Mike, through our coach,
like
and we talked a lot about leadership should have no emotion. It should be logic based,
tactical.
Okay. Where am I versus this, or what?
I'm not getting the outcome in this department. I've got to make some changes.
And as the leader, it's like, well, let me show you. Let me bring you to where you want. Let me help you see what you can't see. But then you start talking about, I have 6 kids. You know, and then you coach around that emotion, right? You can coach and you can get into that with them, but make no mistake, when I'm the leader, I'm going to talk to you from a logic-based standpoint.
Wow, that's good.
And there's not going to be debate.
Interesting.
It's
never
also
heard that before. That's really good.
Like, do you think Nick Saban, when he was at Alabama, that kids went there thinking it was going to be easy? You know what I mean? Like, arguably the best of all time, best recruiting class every year, and 100% the kids signed up for the hard.
The dungeon.
Did they show
them the dungeon? Did they show them the dungeon before they showed up?
Well, you sell the dream, right? If you go to Alabama, you're likely going to go to the NFL. Okay, like if it's like, all right, the NFL, you have a higher likelihood to go if you're Alabama statistically, but you're going to be nobody here if you're a 5-star, right? Yeah. Like, you're not guaranteed. A lot of these coaches, like, will say, you know, not guaranteed playing time. We're not even guaranteeing you get your number. You know, like, a lot of people in recruiting will be like, oh yeah, you come here, we'll give you your number. What number are you? And like, playing time for sure. And it's like, no, at the elite level, they are being like, there's no guarantees. Here's what I can guarantee is that we just put 50 guys in the NFL. Yes. If that's what you're interested in, then I think this is the best route for you. But I can't guarantee that the price isn't going to be. The price is
that's
the price.
Amazing. Dude.
I don't know about you, but I'm fired up right now.
Flip a table over right now.
Yeah.
I want the championship. I want to go to the NFL.
I love that.
Yeah. And look, I think what Brett said, I think you learn that. I think you learn that through doing it wrong a lot. And you learn that from seeing it done right a lot and going, okay, what was different here? Yeah. Because just like you said, I think we've made a ton of mistakes over the years and still do. And it's fun to reflect on that.
So I want to rewind a little bit to what you said earlier is the most difficult thing right now that I feel in that, the coach hat and then the logic leadership hat is when the other side is saying, I feel this or I think this. And I've been having to take a step back and before I respond, say, I understand how you feel, but what I'm directing you to do or the information I'm giving you is just based on the facts and the statistics. And it's not even my decision or my choice. It is just whether it's the company or an objective or directive that we're trying to do. And I have to almost go back to it for them because it's like, hey, this is what needs to be done. I don't really care how you feel. Can't say that. But when they react and they're like, well, I think this, I'm like, well, what do you base that off of? Let's revisit that. What are you basing that off of? I'm talking to you about straight numbers. A and B is C. That's it. Now you're telling me you feel something. What's making you feel that way? But that transition is you're bleeding them together. And it's tough because you want to make them feel that they're supported and especially in sales.
It makes me think of player development, right? It's like when you're working one-on-one behind closed doors, you can put the coach hat on, right? It's like, let's talk about the vulnerabilities or the soft spots compared to how you feel, right? Or let's talk about what you feel compared to how that soft spot applies across the whole system. I think I could see where, and it's tough. It's tough for me sometimes, right? It's like, when I look at data and I look at team members and I look at, I don't want to be disrespectful, but underdeveloped team members or people that aren't where they need to be. And this goes through my whole sales management career. It's like, you can look at the numbers and you can know exactly what someone needs to do. You know exactly why their numbers are or aren't where they need to be. But then what makes it tough, and where I empathize and agree with you, it's like when you see the personal quality or you see the story that's playing in their head, and you see that story is not serving them because they look at the numbers and know exactly what they are or aren't doing either. And 9 times out of 10, the prevailing story is what prevents them from breaking through, which forces those two to kind of melt together. So, we say heavy is the sword because sometimes even though you love on people and you want to default love, right? It's like tough love is also part of that.
Well,
so it's
still
like
love. It's
still love, but it's like, so I just go right to player development. It's like when you're one-on-one with somebody and you're behind closed doors, and I'll just say it, I'm going to act different in front of a team than I'm going to act behind closed doors with somebody. That's just the way it is. And I think that's how it is globally, right? It's like, I know exactly what it's going to take for you. It's different than it is for him, or it's different than what I would stand in front of a team and say. It's like when I know what your weaknesses are, or I know what the story is, I think what people want to hear is, I'm just not going to buy that story anymore, right? The team's going to buy the story. The team's going to feel sorry for you because your numbers suck. The team's going to say, oh, you're doing great. No, you're not. No, you're not.
Damn.
Let's get behind. I'm not buying the story anymore. And I find myself, and I'm not sorry for it. I'll just say right now to anybody, I'm not sorry for that. I love it. The problem we have in sales, in leadership, hell, in society is like we run with people that buy our story, right? These two guys right here know when I'm full of shit. And they tell me, I don't buy your story.
Yeah.
Right. So it's no different for me. It's no different at certain level. There's no level that you're immune to that. So it's like, I just hear what you're saying. So it's so real for me right now, but it's like, just stop bullshitting me.
Yeah.
Stop trying to bullshit me like you bullshit your peer group, your wife, your kids, the rest of this team. Stop bullshitting me.
Yeah.
For your own sake.
For your own
sake, yeah.
For your own sake, and then for what that bullshit means. Sorry to cuss so much, but for what that means from a messaging standpoint to the balance of the team, right? Because then the team starts to believe it, or starts to consider it. It's like time out. No.
You say player development. I'm going to do a quick little small tangent, I promise. So when I was training for semi-pro, obviously it was like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Like, don't do it. Obviously typical, whatever. And I was 15 years old, very just like not aware of what's going on in the world. And my trainer, who was then my mentor, was a family friend, used to play FIFA at his house, hang out, chill. He was kind of like an uncle. He was younger than my parents, but older than us. He was Persian as well. And we spent a lot of time together having fun, boating, playing FIFA, loved it. And he's like, what is your goal? And I'm like, well, I want to try out, but I'm not there. I know I'm not there, but I want to try out. And I know I'm young, and I know I don't have the history that everybody else has up until this point, but I think I can do it. And my only interactions with him were positive and fun. He said, well, if you're ready to put yourself through all of what we're going to go through, you're not allowed to ever complain. Ever. So you're not allowed to complain. And I'm like, well, what is it? He's like, I'm not going to tell you, but I will dedicate my 2 hours 4 times a week. You meet me here. Don't ever be late. Never complain. And always give me everything you have. If you do that, I promise you will have a positive outcome. I don't know what the outcome will be, but you will gain something from it. Wow. This man made me buy undershirts, pack of 3 like from Ross, because he would rip them as during training, meaning put obstacles and it's just 1v1. And I'm a kid, he's a grown man. And he would say, hey, right before you shoot, I'm going to just yank you. So you get used to shooting off balance. Like little stuff. And for me, I would go home, I'd be black, dirty, bleeding, my shirt collar stretched, I had to throw the shirt away. My mom's like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm pretty much training like for the military and torturing myself. And I didn't enjoy it. But all I could remember is him saying, and I'll send this episode to him so he laughs, but he used to always just say, do not complain. Because if you can get through all of that without complaining, the mental toughness you're going to gain will set you up for life.
Amen for him.
Because when I talk to him now, he's like, I always knew you had this quality. You just didn't know how to get to it. So we had to put you through this stuff. And lo and behold, I went to the semi-pro training, 3,000 kids, and like I was faster than everyone. I was better than everyone. I was racing kids on the track team. Like I was like at the top of my game. But what I learned the most was that mental focus, and that all I focused on during those like torturous days were don't complain.
Don't complain.
You can't complain.
You already agreed.
Yeah, because I'm choosing. I already agreed. Like I'm locked in. And when you said player development, it resonated with me because even a salesperson, right? Are you willing to do everything? It's funny because, if my boss ever hears this, he's going to laugh, but because a lot of the stuff is stuff we talk about. But I always, he's like, I don't care if they're off. It's their money, and for a long time I was like, man, they're off, give them their 2 days, like, relax. But it's like, well, what if you got a closing? The world doesn't stop because you're off or at the beach. And I always tell the salespeople, like, are you willing to do that? Because I'm going to reach out to you on your day off.
Yeah.
And my expectation is you're going to do everything possible to succeed.
And dude, I love that.
And it's like, it's tough. Like people are like, oh, why you get up at 5 a.m. and go to the gym? Like, you think you're better than everyone? I was like, no, honestly, like I'm just used to it because I've always done that. And if I don't do it, then I'm less likely to do it. It still sucks every morning.
And for me, I do it because I think I'm less than most people.
Well, are you willing to do it? Because it's not like we're going to be ripped. It's not like we're going to be, we're not going to get the benefit we're probably really searching for. But it's the mental. It's the mental for me. It's like, if I get up and do this, the worst is getting up in the morning and like walking, like grabbing your water bottle and it's like brushing your teeth and you're just like, oh my God, like I could sleep 3 more hours. Like, what is this?
So cozy. The bed's so cozy.
Yeah. And it's cold. And, but it's like, no, I have to, because the feeling that I get when I don't do it and I feel like I already lost in the day, I don't want that feeling. So I'm constantly chasing not feeling like that, because what's hard in your day if you just got up and tortured yourself for 2 hours?
Yeah.
Not literally torture, but like,
No, we know what you mean.
We
So-
just had a workout this morning.
Yeah.
All I heard is Brett during the workout. Hardest part of the day, you're on the
Literally.
75-yard line of the workout and you're starting to kind of have those conversations. And, we say that all the time. So it's well
show
said.
me somebody that wakes up early and has a balanced lifestyle and gives their all and they're not homeless.
Yeah.
They're not struggling in life.
Right.
There's a reason. There's a correlation.
We say success leaves clues. That's a clue.
That's right.
Absolutely. I like that. I've never heard that.
Well, I
Success
wanted to
leaves clues.
speak to one thing in regards to, your coach from when you were younger. What a cool lesson, by the way. So
Yeah.
when you send this to him, shout out to coach, because there could have been another side of that. He could have just said, yes, I'll train you without that level of intensity. And then guess what would happen? You would have got with all the guys in the semi-pro, and then you wouldn't have been as good. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't have been prepared. And then you would have gone back and been like, man, like I'm just not where I need to be. I need more coaching. And it's like, no, like when somebody comes to us and they say, hey, I want marketing and sales or whatever it is, right? It's like, are you sure? Like, here's what it's required. Like that metaphorically, do we have that conversation to get
there's
that
an
agreed
ask.
upon contract?
Agreed.
Yeah.
There's an ask, right? Like, so in leadership, I think a lot of times some of the missteps that we're talking about, there was no ask.
Yes.
And there was an ask. It's like, look, I'm going to give it to you, but I'm going to ask this one thing. Like, you went to North Carolina with Chris. And Chris, he's opening an office in Charlotte, flying up there every month, and Rod's gone with him and done these marketing calls, and they've done really well, and they've got a lot of traction.
And he's about as committed as a dude as you'll
He's
meet.
committed as he come, but he started deviating from what Rod's coaching was, and he's like, and Rod just looked at him and goes, if we're gonna do this, and if I'm gonna help you, you're gonna do it my way.
Yeah.
That's my one ask. Okay, and he's just head down, just bulldozing, and he's having a lot of success. But there was an ask involved, and the ask isn't for you as the coach. The ask is for the student to make sure the student doesn't get in their own way, right? You could have gotten your own way. He was like, no, if we're going to do this, I got to make sure we remove you from the equation. You know, just give me your body. Don't give me your mind.
And believe me, I did. I bucked one time, and he ignored me for a week.
Yeah.
So it was like, it was just, I was 15, 16 years old. Like I didn't, you don't
And you just said something there, and I have to say this, right? When your phone rings and it's somebody from your team, your first instinct is, oh yeah, I answer that call, because it's the person on your team that doesn't buck. Mm-hmm. It's the person on the team that said, my ask was this, here were the requirements, and you embody that every time.
Yep.
I'm answering that call. Mm-hmm. Tell me it's not true, boys. All of you.
Yeah.
When the phone rings and it's someone that's constantly wanting to debate, and I don't take me the wrong way, but it's like if we've had player development, if we've bought into a common direction, and that person operates outside that, it's like, man, I'll call them back.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean,
it's human nature. It goes back to where we started this conversation about a pleasant personality. There's just a certain level of energy that you go, are we going to get in a conversation that I'm going to end up having to convince you to do it this way?
Yes.
Because I don't want to have to convince you.
Better said.
Well, that comes back to a philosophy back in the day that a mentor was extremely successful to the three of us. Said, it's like, I'm going to support what supports me. You support what supports you, right? That's what a team is. But if somebody's operating outside of what the team's objective and they don't want to play team, don't expect to get the same treatment, right? I'm going to buck you for a week, right? You're violating the ask. And my time is valuable, and there's a lot of people who want it and need it, and I'll give it to you. I'll give you 100%. But if you're not giving me 100%, we're not playing that game.
Well, and Ardavon, I think about you too, right? It's like you have a specific person that you're looking for. You have little intricacies and little quirks about you when you interview somebody. You ask questions that you know the answer to look for a reaction. I share a lot of that, by the way, and I love that earlier. But it's like you've done it. And you're looking for people that want to do it. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, if you want to join me, this is how we're going to do it. This is the way that works. It's not that there aren't other things that can be effective, but this is our playbook sort of thing. Yeah. And we're going to do it this way, to your point. And it's like those are the people you're looking to run with.
Yeah. That's team building, right? Like, we're not looking for the best players. We're looking for the right players.
That's right.
And so, look, your way might work. It'd be great. It's just the team that I'm trying to build here in Tampa, the model that I know that I've been charged with the result to get results, because the buck stops with me, and I'm the one that has to answer for it. I know what we need to do in order to make that work. And you might be really great. Go work for somebody else. But for this team, I'm looking for this specific person. And I just love the no apologies. I love the no apologies.
And you're not always going to do stuff that's directly related. Like half the time I wasn't even playing with a ball or doing any type of soccer training. I was doing random stuff like moving trash cans from one side of
the Karate
park.
Kid.
Mr. Miyagi.
Yeah. And
when are we going to learn how to punch?
It's funny because there was no one there. There was no social media. I wasn't able to validate any of it. Like, I just remember coming home and just being like dead, like just exhausted, just literally almost torturous. And my mom was like, should I have your dad talk to him? Like, is he working too hard? And I was like, no, I I told him to do this. I agreed to get through this because I knew that was the only way. And like, I had an obsession with soccer. So I was like, this is the only way to do it. But I don't feel that, especially in today's day and age, people understand that like, when is that, like, you might work hard and do everything right and things don't work out your way. Yeah. That happens. Yeah. But the fact that you were willing to do that, you now have the jet fuel required to hit the ground and shoot back up. Because until we have a saying in Farsi that until your head hits the concrete, you don't really get it. And never understood it till my head hit the concrete. And it's like, once you're at the very bottom and you hit, like, it hurts, there's only up from there. But like, what have you done to, like, if you're just someone who's just like, you know what? And I know people like this in my whole life they're always complaining. They're always looking at the negative. It's like, you know what? Let's shift that focus, give everything you can, and your outcome's going to be good. Even if it's not the outcome you want, it'll still be good because you just gained all this information, you know? And it's that discipline and that just being aware. Being aware is like the biggest thing. And I struggle with it a lot when I get like bad service somewhere or someone's just mean and rude for no reason. And I get so angry. And my wife's like, baby, you don't know what they're going through. You know, take a breath. And I'm like, yeah,
it's a good balance.
I'm like, yeah, you're right. But like right now I just want to like go talk to their boss and like get them fired. But it's a struggle. You don't ever master it. And that's the beauty of it, right? If you're not growing, you're dying. So just,
God, I'm riddled with reminders of just certain subtleties that allow not only to be more effective with how you engage people and influence, but also how to help those that you're charged with leading do the exact same thing. Yeah. And, you know, tough love is love. You know, some of the greatest love lessons in my life have come from, you know, tough love. And that's, you know, that's a gift if you allow it to be. And, you know, decades later, you'll be sitting here on a podcast talking about how someone gave you some tough love and it was one of the best things that ever happened. I mean, I've got some of those stories too, and I'm so grateful for them. So it's just it's a great reminder too that, you know, there's a burden of leadership that's real and it's tough and you take it home with you and it's challenging and, you know, you can put on that logical hat, but at the end of the day, you wouldn't be in a leadership position if you didn't feel empathy for people. And at the end of the day, these people, things we're talking about is because you care and you connect, and it's way harder to give the tough love than it is to give the kudos. You know, that's easy, you know, but there's a reason why you're charged with getting the result in a leadership position. And it has to do with the fact that you have to engage that stuff and you have to know these things and you have to practice these. And maybe sometimes you do it and you go, man, that didn't go well. And you do it over and over and over again until you're able to figure out, how do I approach this in an effective way, even though your intention was correct. So if you're out there and you're listening to this podcast, just know that, like, man, just scribble outside the lines and sooner or later you'll get better at it. You know, like I'm sure, Ardavon, for every win you've had on the belt, you know, there's 3 times, 4 times that you did it absolutely terrible. You know,
absolutely.
It's like the value of a practitioner, you know, man in the arena. You know, but the worst, what is the only thing worse than failure is to not try at all.
You guarantee yourself not to succeed when you don't try. So it's just it's one of those things where, you know, it's great to be here now and look back and be able to analyze all this stuff, but it's not been a clear cut, you know, oh, this is great, you do everything right and everything works out. No, there has to be the failure. There has to be the like WTF moments where you're like, man, did I botch that horribly? Did I misread something? Did I do something like, and it happens, but those are for me, it's always like, all right, where's the solution? Where am I headed next? I don't like to dwell or sit and ponder on something like, you can't control anything. Control the controllables. And where are we going next? You know, and how can you influence? And there is people that don't want to be influenced, you know, and they're not there yet, and they haven't started their journey. But it doesn't hurt to put the mentality out there and be like, hey, if you want it, it's here. It's hanging here in the closet. If you want to come grab it.
It's an invitation.
Yeah. It's
right. We're not pushing anything, but it's an invitation.
Yeah.
Hey, you want to be coached? No problem. I'm going to invite you to do this, but here's the agreement.
And everybody's got a story. I mean, even on my podcast, when I talk to people, I'm complete strangers. It's my first question is always, you know, like, what got you into this world? Like, how did you start? Because everybody's got a story, and there's nobody that is like, oh, well, I was 8 years old and I wanted to do this and I went this and I went, you know, there's always something.
Yeah.
And I feel like the more stuff you go through, the more well-rounded you are. You know, it's like I tell people, I'm like, throw me in an island somewhere or in a village. I don't care where I'll get somewhere. I'll end up being self-sufficient somehow. Amen. Just because it's just what I've been dealt with, you know. But I mean, we're all here. We're all very like-minded individuals, and I think that it just goes to show. It just validates us even more that, you know, one conversation with Brett led me to, you know, a whole slew of conversations, and I actually needed his help on something, and it wasn't even a friendly call. It was a Brett, dude, I need real quick. I know it's 8:30 at night, real quick. Like, I don't even care how you're doing today. I need help. Yeah. Like, you're an insurance guy. I'm about to put you in the game. Like, yeah. I need help. What do I do? You know? And we built that trust right away, but it just goes to show you, like, he knew I was genuine. Like, I genuinely don't have a clue what I'm doing, and I need help. And on top of that, it's, you know, he didn't even, if he was bothered by it, I would have immediately been like, man, he's not the guy. Because if he is who he says he is, this is one, it's business, and you're obviously passionate about your business. So if you're not willing to help me, right. then, you know, how can I send other people to you?
Very good.
You know,
very good.
Yeah, full circle. That.
At full circle.
Well,
sure.
And it's the greatest compliment anybody can give you by calling you and needing help. You know, because they could call anybody and they call you. So it's like the unsaid of like the ultimate, you know, compliment. So appreciate you, man.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Great to meet you too, dude.
Yeah. Awesome 100%. To meet you, man.
Well, real quick, so people can find you after this, because, man, this will be fun to listen to on the playback. So we got to get a lot of short clips out of this one, man. Especially, I wanted you to get a lot of short clips of Rod saying bullshit, because I think he said it like 4 times. It was really great. Maybe we can like replay that.
And I'm not sorry.
Make it a funny one. So, but how can people find you? Bullshit. How can people find you, and specifically with your podcast, man? And I would love to give that some shout out and love.
Apple Podcasts, Bricks and Banter, and then also on Spotify. Type in Bricks and Banter, it'll come right up. You can search me on LinkedIn as well, Ardavon Moayer, and you know, anything that I can do to help, or anyone that wants to be on the show, you know, maybe one of you guys.
Likewise, man.
Let's go.
Yeah, likewise.
Well, as always, man, I just appreciate the friendship more than anything.
Of course. And
now you get to meet my 2 brothers, which is amazing. So for all you listeners out there, this is anything other than ordinary, I would say. So go ahead and be extraordinary this week.